Viewer discretion is advised.
Angeles Chargers, Alex Spanos and family. Let's see, what did Alex Spanos do for money? Number one, he used to sell sandwiches to migrant workers in the 50s. In 1960, he became a slumlord in Stockton. 209, bitches. Number three, he let his dickhead kid beg the city of San Diego for money instead of buying a stadium himself. And you know what line is coming next.
Fuck you, Spanos. Fuck you, Spanos. Fuck you, Spanos. Puta madre, Spanos.
What's one thing you don't do against Peyton Manning? Let him back in the game, and after getting out to a 24-point first-half lead, the Chargers and Phillip Rivers looked to have things under control. After Manning threw 4 consecutive TDs to take the lead, Chris Harris capped the game with a 46-yard INT, and the Broncos won easily 35-24. And it was all Spanos' fault. Your team cheats puts a heavy emphasis on PEDs, which I don't find interesting because often it's up to the individual to carry out that type of cheating. But in 1963, the San Diego team trainer Alvin Roy introduced steroids to not just the Chargers, but allegedly the entire league, calling the pills extra protein. It's amazing how the players get bigger and faster every year, isn't it? There are some nasty shutouts on this list, but this one is the first. Dan Fouts started for the Chargers and was 3 for 36 with 99 yards and 4 picks for a rating of 5.1. All of the Falcons' 5 TDs came on the ground. The Chargers finished 2-11-1 that year. Their tie was against, you guessed it, the Browns.
Why you bringing up old shit?
I could get on the Bolts for letting Drew Brees walk, but Phillip Rivers had already been drafted, or for leaving the city of San Diego like a giant crybaby that didn't get a free stadium. But the biggest backfire is the hilarious plight of their unofficial mascot, Boltman. After the Chargers left for the town that doesn't want them, Boltman decided that his costume was no longer needed. So he put it up for auction on eBay, thinking a new fan in LA would appreciate the getup. After his ridiculous reserve price wasn't met, his little outfit and the full intellectual rights to a low-rent Goku went unsold. Apparently, he did receive a bid of $71K, but since he was giving half of it to charity, he was quoted as saying he invested over 6 figures into the costume and it wasn't worth it to sell it for that little. Yeah, $100K on a costume for a team that left? That's a peeing on an electric fence level backfire. Once the site of both the NFL and the MLB, SDCCU, formerly known as Jack Murphy Stadium or Qualcomm, is now solely used for San Diego State football. The Chargers left in 2016 to play in a soccer stadium in LA. SDCCU has hosted 3 Super Bowls and has been the target of several demolition proposals. One of the oddest stadium stories, Balboa Stadium was an NFL venue for 5 years in which an upper deck was added to increase the capacity. However, once the Chargers left, the entire stadium was demolished and rebuilt, and it now serves as a high school and community college field. The host of 3 Super Bowls, the now non-NFL Qualcomm, aka SDCCU, somehow got to host the big game in the current century. It was over 36 years old when it did. And that game was just as ugly as the venue, and since then things have gone downhill for the once dual-use stadium. It's been relegated to average San Diego State football. Lovely town, substandard Super Bowl stadium. Multiple proposals, multiple sites, lots of bickering, all failure. When the city of San Diego recognized that aging Qualcomm Stadium wasn't going to cut it for the Chargers, they feverishly listened to any and all ideas on how to appease sphincter boy Dean Spanos. Proposed sites included Oceanside, Chula Vista, downtown San Diego, National City, and more. Though no site was ever confirmed, in 2015 these renderings were released on Twitter, and a slew of others. Of course, all of these plans would have been great, but Dean Spanos wanted the city to foot most of the bill for the new digs. And the residents, after studies showed they were losing money on the rotting carcass of Qualcomm, didn't want anything to do with that. Following multiple votes, all plans were rejected by the citizens. And Spanos moved the team to LA to share space with another asshole on this list, Stan Kroenke. I hope they enjoy each other's company.
Where's your other hand? Between two pillows. Those aren't pillows.
How is the $5 billion monument to Stan Kroenke's hairpiece and Dean Spanos' greed not the #1 stadium? Well, despite it being a house of pure opulence, the biggest negative for the site is atmosphere and surrounding areas, especially when it comes to apathetic fans who, even if they were allowed to come this year, would only be coming to network, check out the new digs, or Chargers fans not showing up at all. Still, an amazing stadium though. After being punched by Buddy Ryan on his way out of Houston, Kevin Gilbride smacked the Chargers with 22 games of hot garbage, going 6-16 in a little over 2 years. The worst crime of all, not pulling a Buddy Ryan on GM Bobby Beathard for drafting Ryan Lee. The Chargers' most devastating home defeat came just last year, losing a 45-0 shutout to a surgically repaired Cam Newton and the Patriots. It's fair to argue that this doesn't count much because there were no Chargers fans actually there, but on the other hand, when are they actually there? You missed the playoffs because you couldn't tie the Raiders. So you got rid of Anthony Lynn, maybe one of the most frustrating coaches on earth, for your analytical genius, Brandon Staley, who finished just 2 wins better than Anthony Lynn. Oh, and it seems so prudent just to go for it on 4th when data genius says to, until you mess up and don't get it, and don't make the playoffs. It's cool, there aren't any real Charger fans to trigger anyways. They all live in San Diego and fucking hate your ass. It's complicated. Los Angeles Chargers. You would think that Dean Spanos would never, ever want to sell the team that his family has owned for 40 years. And you are right about that. However, when his dad, Alex Spanos, died, he split the team up amongst his children. And apparently not all of them are fans of Dean, like his sister, Dia Berberian, who is suing him. She alleges there are debts of over $350 million and the trust doesn't even have enough money to support its charity work. Berberian's kids also sued Dean, saying they have been screwed out of some money. If the team is really in financial despair, Spanos might be forced to sell. It's still wild to me that even his own sister is like,
say the line, Bart!
Fuck you, Spanos.
Don Coryell, 1979. Don Coryell was an innovator in the game of football. He changed the NFL with his vaunted passing attack, nicknamed Air Coryell, and enjoyed a long, successful coaching career. Things started rough for the Chargers in 1978 after a 1-3 start. Head coach Tommy Protho up and quit like Southwest Airlines on the busiest travel day of the year. So the team brought in his airness, who had previous head coaching experience in St. Louis. What's unique about this situation is Coryell wasn't with the team at the time they brought him in, and he had been sitting at home unemployed, waiting for a call. And boy, did he answer it. Despite losing his first game, the Chargers went 8-4, and the team finished 9-7, narrowly missing the playoffs. The team won 7 of their last 8, and their last 3 games they scored 40, 37, and 45 points respectively. Air Coryell was here to stay. And now, for the #1 ranked NFL stadium. It's just not surprising that a $5 billion stadium would end up #1 on this list. It truly is amazing. And even though it has a roof, it's technically indoor/outdoor. And beyond that, it's an entire area and campus. Fun fact, the NFL actually rents the land for their headquarters from Stan Kroenke. Tom, fill us in.
Everything that I just complained about for the Raiders and what we complained about for like the Giants and Jets, the same exact thing applies for SoFi, but it makes up for it because of how insane it is. Like, again, no Rams, no Chargers stuff. They have their own, they have like 8 locker rooms. Like they have individual locker rooms. So like the Rams have their own, the Chargers have their own, that they got like college. Well, like it's insanity. The campus is insane. It's twice as big as Disneyland, like the whole entire campus. Like, and I think it's like 3.5 times bigger than Vatican City or some crap like that. It is enormous. You walk outside, like you're in the stadium, and it's like you're in a rainforest. They have like a whole like ecological site where it's like all plants that are native to LA that are just hanging out there. There's an art museum that's inside the stadium. Like, it's wild. It's basically what like Vegas is doing, but amped up to 1,000. They can host any event. They're doing the opening and closing Olympics. Like they're hosting that, hosting a World Cup game, of course. Like Taylor Swift, who's doing like 2 or 3 shows in all these other stadiums, doing 6 of them in SoFi. And there's a reason. Like, it is massive. Looks like a college campus, and just like, it's so different. Just the architecture, the engineering, it is beautiful. Like, but you could argue like it's more of an event space than it's like where you go to play football.
You know, like I hear, you know, SoFi doesn't have air conditioning. Does that affect it at all? Or, I mean,
no, because it's freaking California and the weather's like perfect. So it's an indoor-outdoor stadium and it's beautiful. Like, you get the wind that comes through. Like, no, it's, they have the roof that they can put any message on. So like planes can see it. And it could be different. They can have one inside, they can have one outside, they can have like a whole video play on the roof of the stadium. Like, it is insane.
LA Chargers. There is so much low-hanging fruit when it comes to the Chargers, but to all 9 Chargers fans out there, let me assure you, I will not go for it. Ironically, you have one of the best histories in terms of quarterbacks, from Dan Fouts to Drew Brees to Phillip Rivers and now Justin Herbert. Herbert is a physical freak and a joy to watch, and I already know he has absolutely zero chance of ever winning a Super Bowl as long as he's in a Chargers uniform. We already saw this in his rookie season, and it'll only get worse as the team finds even more ridiculous ways to lose games as he enters his prime. Much like the Raiders, you will have to deal with Mahomes for the next 15 years, drastically limiting your ceiling. You will never taste real success. In fact, since I started narrating this, half your team got put on IR for the season. Despite all of your talent, nobody is ever afraid to play against you because you're basically the AFC version of the Atlanta Falcons minus the 28-3 collapse. Congrats. Boltman, Chargers. Look at this handsome bastard. Can you believe the Chargers don't officially recognize him as their team mascot? Well, guess what? I'm not a bigot, so I do recognize him. He was born with a deformed head in the shape of a thunderbolt, but he obviously lifts a bunch of weights to look good, and he wears shoulder pads in case the team needs him to go into the game. That's what you call the heart of a champion and a goddamn great mascot. Rating 9 out of 10. Los Angeles Chargers, Dan Fouts. One of the toughest choices on this list was between Phillip Rivers and Dan Fouts. Neither had much playoff success and tended to implode in high pressure situations, but in the end I went with Fouts due to a better peak. Rivers made more Pro Bowls, but Fouts made 2 All-Pro teams, whereas Rivers never did. Fouts also should have won MVP in 1982 over a goddamn kicker, whereas Rivers was never really in the MVP convo. Fouts also made 2 AFC Championship games compared to just 1 for Rivers. It's close, and on the right day I might be convinced to go with Rivers, but this might all be for nothing since Justin Herbert should take this spot one day if he stays healthy. LA Chargers, Ryan Leaf. Pretty easy choice here. Not only the worst quarterback in Chargers history, but probably the worst quarterback in NFL history, and maybe the worst draft bust in sports history. It's still baffling to think how a guy who was viewed as a potential superstar quarterback flamed out so badly in such a short amount of time. He finished his Chargers career with 13 touchdowns, 33 interceptions, and a 48.8 passer rating with a 4-14 record. At least he's finally gotten his life together. Los Angeles/San Diego Chargers, 2006 divisional round. San Diego was the best team in football in 2006 and had the MVP LaDainian Tomlinson. But guess what? None of that fucking mattered in their divisional round matchup versus New England. San Diego couldn't take advantage of 3 bad quarters of play by Tom Brady, shocker, and had just an 8-point lead with 6 minutes left when Brady threw an interception that got fumbled back to New England, of course. New England would score a touchdown and 2-point conversion to tie the game, then eventually took a 24-21 lead with a minute left. Phillip Rivers drove San Diego into field goal range, but Nate Keating missed the kick to seal the loss. Los Angeles Chargers, Keenan Allen. Allen is obviously not a bad player, but he's not as good as he was 3 to 4 years ago despite the Pro Bowl nods continuing. He's become a reception merchant the last 2 years. His yards per catch in that span is a putrid 10.3. For a wide receiver who is viewed as elite, he should be much more of a downfield threat instead of a Jarvis Landry clone. LA Chargers, Drew Brees. Drew Brees' entire career is not overrated. The guy is a borderline top 5 quarterback of all time, but that's exactly why he's in this slot, because he didn't become a legendary quarterback until after he left the Chargers. So people bringing him up with Rivers and Fouts and the best Chargers quarterbacks of all time discussions is wrong. It's easy to forget now, but most most of Brees' time with San Diego was not good. In 5 seasons there, he had just one great year. This is all the more reason his career with the Saints was so unexpected and incredible. Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert. This is honestly one of the tougher choices because Herbert's talent is so obvious and he's getting so much hype despite the fact that he currently has a losing record as a starter. But fuck it, my eyes tell me that he's the real deal. But if LA misses the playoffs again this year, discussions will have to be had. Verdict? Properly. Los Angeles Chargers. Oh wow, look, there's another graphic about how awesome Justin Herbert's stats have been and how he's setting every individual record for a quarterback through their first 2 seasons. Wow. Well, he has a losing record and he's still never made the playoffs. Also, let's be real. Herbert's first 2 seasons pale in comparison to Mahomes' first 2 seasons as a starter, so it's pretty hollow. Herbert is still inconsistent and he gets a pass from the media for now because he's awesome to watch when he's on. Even with all his obvious talent, the Chargers remain the Chargers. They have all these stars and I still expect them to finish around 10-7 or 9-8. If Herbert misses the playoffs again this year, which is very possible considering how loaded the AFC West is, some uncomfortable convos will need to be had, and Chargers fans won't like that very much. Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert. We are at a pivotal point of Herbert's career. He's now entering his 4th season. He is beloved by the eye test watchers and the highlight reel merchants for his unbelievable highlight plays. But he's also criticized by others for not winning anything and not having made the playoffs until last season. And then even in his first and only playoff game ended up blowing a 27-point lead. There's no questioning his talent. There's no questioning whether he can play. But he still hasn't won a single playoff game. And if he's going to continue to be hyped as one of the top quarterbacks in the league, playoff success is probably the biggest part of that. And Herbert does not have that yet. Prove it rating, 8 out of 10. Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert. I've had my issues with Herbert and his inconsistency and being a bit of a highlight reel merchant and a check down merchant over the last couple seasons. But he's still the best player on a talented Chargers team, and the Chargers will go as far as he takes them. Now that Joe Lombardi is gone with his dink and dunk offense, I expect Herbert to finally have that legendary breakout season that all the great quarterbacks have at some point and firmly cement himself as a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the league. Honorable mention goes to Derwin James, a versatile defensive player whenever he's on the field. Unfortunately, he has a little bit of Bob Sanders disease, although he has for the most part stayed healthy the last couple years, but you never know with him. Los Angeles Chargers. 2019, Jerry Tillery. One of the worst players at his position. Miss. 2020, Justin Herbert. Although he can be overrated by some for his flashy highlights, Herbert is the real deal. Hit. 2020, Kenneth Murray. Murray has yet to become the star many thought, but he's not a complete scrub either, so he's mid. 2021, Rashawn Slater. Slater made the Pro Bowl as a rookie and has a very promising future despite his sophomore year being ended early. I'm going to say he's a hit. 2022, Zion Johnson. Johnson's rookie season was merely okay, and it's too early to tell whether he'll be a hit or a miss. Therefore, he's mid. Los Angeles Chargers, Khalil Mack. Mack still has a superstar name despite not having played like one in several years. His last truly great season came back in 2020, but his last 2 years have merely been just average. He's not a bad player still, but he's not the dominant force that he once was, and I think once Chargers fans and NFL fans wrap their heads around that, he won't be overrated anymore. Will he finally get back to double-digit sacks in a season for the first time since 2018? I doubt. Los Angeles Chargers, 1981, Dan Fouts. Phillip Rivers and Dan Fouts had much of the same career, although Fouts was a little bit different off the field than Rivers was in terms of his sex life. Both put up humongous stats but lack team accomplishments, but to me, Fouts' most memorable season, which gets the nod over 2004 Drew Brees, to be honest, came in 1981 when he threw for nearly 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns with an amazing passer rating and not a lot of sacks, carrying a terrible defensive team to the playoffs where he won the famous playoff game versus the Miami Dolphins in which everybody was passing out and had to be carried off the field. Unfortunately, Fouts' season would end in Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game in historically terrible weather, and the Chargers lost by 20. But hey, when you're talking about combination of stats, era adjusted, and team success, this is really the best I could do for the Chargers. Here's looking at you, Justin Herbert. Los Angeles Chargers, Brandon Staley. Staley enters year 3 as the Chargers head man, and the results thus far have been pretty mediocre, as he's won 56% of his games. The pressure of having a great quarterback like he has in Justin Herbert is that people expect you to win and win big, and Staley hasn't done that. He came in as a defensive-minded coach, and the Chargers' defenses have been very good. Once you consider that in year 1, his questionable coaching decisions cost the Chargers a playoff playoff spot. And then last year, after finally making the playoffs, they blew a 27-point lead. And then you consider how much talent is on the Chargers roster, especially their quarterback. You can't help but feel like they've underachieved with Staley. Very few coaches entered 2023 with less margin for error. I have his hot seat ranking at a blistering 4.5 out of 5. Los Angeles Chargers. The Chargers are a loser franchise, and Chargers fans know it. Despite all of his hype, Justin Herbert couldn't make playoffs his first 2 seasons, and then when he finally got there last year, he immediately blew a 27-point lead. Yes, I said he blew a 27-point lead. He's always praised out the ass whenever he fires an amazing rocket downfield, but is never blamed for his bad to mediocre performances that litter his resume. Herbert has one of the greatest arms in NFL history, but did you know he didn't even average 10 yards per completion last year? I know, Joe Lombardi. But now Joe Lombardi is gone. There are no more excuses for Herbert to play like Teddy Bridgewater and Jacoby Brissett. Despite his freakish athleticism and measurables, he barely runs or scrambles for first downs or touchdowns. I know, he was hurt last year. Well, he was healthy enough to play, and if you're out there, there's no excuses. Let's see, what did I miss? Oh yeah, Nate Kading missing field goals in 2004 and 2009. Marlon McCree fumble in 2006. Phillip Rivers had great stats, but he was such a horrible clutch performer that he's not worthy of a Hall of Fame spot. The only place Chargers fans will ever see Justin Herbert hoist the Lombardi Trophy is on franchise mode in Madden.
Well. The Chargers somehow chargered in ways that the Chargers haven't even fathomed. This is legendary incompetence on full display. A 27-point lead. 5 turnovers against an overmatched opponent in the first half. All the momentum in the world to suffer a painful defeat to Kansas City and Arrowhead next week. Yet you chose a different outcome. You chose failure. Hilarious, surprisingly predictable failure. I don't know how you did it, but this is a collapse so awful that I consider moving the team again out of shame. This is a choke for the ages. Something that was quite predictable in the grand scheme of things. If you've been paying any attention to this team, this is very on brand for the inferior LA franchise. One that tries so hard to be part of the popular clique, yet is only mocked by them behind their back. You live a lie. You've been living one since you moved to this city that doesn't give a flying fuck about you. You pretend to believe that you're being accepted, but it's mere delusion. No one cares for you. There is only laughter at your expense. And it shows in who you have leading the way. Brandon Staley is a fucking hack. And I've been screaming it for months. He's been escaping his own idiocy all season. Going for it on 4th down at his own 45, leading by 2 with time winding down? Escaped. Not using any of his goddamn timeouts in a 2-minute drill? Escaped. Trying to out-Falcon the Falcons? Escaped. Playing all of his starters for 55 minutes when there was absolutely nothing to play for in Week 18? It seemed like he escaped it. But the gods have a sense of humor all their own. Do you know who could have helped you in the second half? Mike Williams. You know, the guy you got injured thanks to stubbornness. Oh, but rest is so important throughout the week, am I right? Defensive guru. Having consistently terrible defenses is the mark of a defensive expert. Going into a soft-shell cocoon like every other defensive coordinator is a good thing. How much was this guy carried by Aaron Donald? With your faux analytics and your sheer lack of anything resembling football savvy, your so-called skills are laid bare for all of us to witness. Gnarly bones and hardened skin. Barren. A magnum opus of suck. 7 yards of rushing on set rushing plays in the second half. 7. They got 13 rushing yards on a Justin Herbert QB sneak. That's criminal malpractice. Somewhere in the clouds above us, Alex Spanos pisses on the grave of this team, knowing that his useless son ruined everything he built. Dead serious when I say this, Dean. Contract the franchise. There's no coming back from this. You've moved to the so-called greener pastures to build a castle of failure and humiliation. You've betrayed everything the Chargers have stood for to make them the Clippers of the NFL. Is it worth it to watch the stadium you rent out be invaded by opposing fans every home game? You deserve every single shred of this shit. Even as your opposition and the refs do everything in their power to hand you an undeserved win, justice is swift. Who knows, maybe you can make an overproduced social media video about it like you always do. It's par for the course for this godforsaken franchise. Born into pain. Know nothing in life besides pain. Will wither and die in pain. Fuck you, Spanos. Fuck you forevermore.
Here, please hit me as hard as you can. You blow back.
Once again, Schottenheimer bounces back on his feet quickly to another squad in the AFC West, the San Diego Superchargers. They've been quite bad for a while. This is going to be a long-term cleanup, but an 8-4 start to the season is at least promising enough. Oh right, this is Marty Schottenheimer, nothing ever comes easy. Amplify this by the San Diego curse and you get 4 straight losses to end the season. Playoffs are a pipe dream, the typical fare. On the Schottenheimer scale, this is like a 5 out of 10, nothing exorbitant. I have good news. Only if you replace good with horrifically catastrophic, it makes sense. The Chargers have imploded. Turns out the team defense has become more of a flaming wreck than it usually is. They start 0-5 and keep going from there. The only winning is in the Tank Bowl with a 4-12 season. Even then, there is no winning. Eli Manning wants nothing to do with this franchise either. Fucking lovely. Turns out Drew Brees is pretty good at this whole quarterback thing. Take last year's record and invert it. Smells pretty good, doesn't it? It may not be enough for a first-round bye, but look, you're facing the Jets. They may be up by 10 in the fourth quarter, but look at this drive Brees is putting on. That's what we call a leader. The game is tied. There's nothing better than the long elusive win at home. Pennington sure as shit isn't going to sky the ball on you. Nate Kading just has to do what Lynn Elliott couldn't and kick a field goal.
Here's your ball game. And he's gonna miss it wide to the right.
That was obviously too much to ask. I guess this is the monkey's paw that wishes for a good Charger team. You lose in embarrassing fashion at home. Par for the course. The offense is rock solid, but that wonderful Charger luck results in many heartbreaking losses. Even with a rough start, at least you're 8-4 and have an outside chance at a playoff berth? I'm not even gonna try and get my hopes up for this one. Losing 3 of 4 to close out the year? Are we just repeating past scenarios at this point? Marty Schottenheimer finally has what has eluded him throughout his coaching career. A top-flight offense. The weapons at his disposal are some of the best he's ever had. A young Phillip Rivers at QB, LaDainian Tomlinson in MVP form complemented by Michael Turner, a rookie Vincent Jackson, Antonio Gates in his prime, and that's not including the rock-solid defense harkening back to his Chiefs teams of the 90s. An outstanding 14-2 record giving them the #1 seed in the AFC. The only thing standing in their way is the New England Patriots dynasty. Amazing things are happening. The Chargers have the lead deep into the fourth quarter. All they need is one play, one moment, and the win is theirs. Oh no! Are you fucking kidding me? The Schottenheimer curse is so potent that it literally forces his players to undo the great heroics that they just made? Seriously? Fuck off with this shit! Unsurprisingly, the Patriots cheat death and take the lead, because that's always how this shit goes. But even then, San Diego needs one more moment of heartbreak. Congratulations, you lost a hard-fought game mostly thanks to a fumbled interception and a missed field goal. But that doesn't mean we can't have an ego stroke. Good news, Marty! You're fired! What, you think they're kidding? The Chargers and their trust fund owner want nothing to do with you! Get out of San Diego, Marty! Get the fuck out! God, fuck you, Spanos. Do you now understand the plight of Schottenheimer? It is nothing but pain. One of the great head coaches to never win a Super Bowl, thrown into the pile with Grant, Levy, and Coryell. Even though my style should have me shitting on this kind of man, I honestly can't. I've always had a soft spot for Schottenheimer. It was his style of play, his strong defenses. They always were sturdy, well-run teams. And to be completely honest, when looking at most of these games, unlike other coaches, a majority of these games weren't his fault. It's literally wave after wave of bullshit that pops up at him. The defense collapsed repeatedly on a 98-yard drive. The sure-handed running back fumbled on the fucking 1-yard line. What the hell is a quarterback? The kicker decided today would be the best time to ruin his career. Here's an interception turning into a 10-yard gain for the opposition because the cornerback had a brain fart. It's just terrible luck for the majority of them. Hell, the Schottenheimer curse trickled down all the way to his assistants, with none of them coming close to a Super Bowl until Bill Cowher broke it in Super Bowl 40. But even then, this story is incomplete. There is one more chapter to get to. Marty Schottenheimer takes on one final coaching role with the Virginia Destroyers, an expansion team part of a developmental yet struggling United Football League. The season itself is a total mess. Ratings are abysmal. The league is hemorrhaging money. They cancel the final 2 weeks of the season to cut their losses. Wouldn't you know it, the Destroyers make it to the championship game against the Las Vegas Locomotives. It's not even close. The game is an utter rout as the Locomotives have no answers for Virginia's defensive stronghold. The curse is lifted with a bittersweet closure. Marty Schottenheimer wins a championship. It's not Lombardi, but may he ride off into football Valhalla as vindicated for past pain. He technically resigned from his post due to contract issues and he wasn't getting paid, but let's pretend he had a storybook ending. I think that's what's